Buongiorno tutti, and welcome to your first supplemental video for Italian for Travelers, week one. This week, I'm going to focus on la pronuncia e la studia, that is, pronunciation and study. For this supplemental video, I'm going to start with a review of greetings and salutations, introductions, and the formal versus informal, those questions and answers we began. I'm going to go a little deeper into the alphabet and pronunciation, which is what we had to rush through. And then I'm going to wrap up by beginning a little bit of Language Study 101, especially focusing on beginning listening comprehension, because that's how we often get our foot in the door. But I'm going to start with a great study tip, which is about memorizing vocabulary. So to give you an example, the Italian word for lawyer is avvocato. An advocate, someone who speaks on behalf of someone else, comes straight from the Latin. But the way I like to remember this word is I imagine a little avocado, like a little shriveled up avocado with glasses and a briefcase going, I object. So that's how I remember avvocato is lawyer. So later on in the video, towards the end, we'll talk more about those kinds of tips and how you can approach your study to be most effective. So we started class with qual è la differenza? What's the difference between buongiorno, buonasera, and buonanotte? And we learned that buongiorno is good morning or good day, literally buon, good, giorno, day, as in it's not delivery, it's di giorno. We learned buonasera is good evening. And you would start greeting people with buonasera around the time the sun starts to set, or after around 5 o'clock. It depends, and there's no hard and fast rule. But you would greet people with buonasera well into the evening or the night if you were greeting them and saying hello. You would then say buonanotte, good night, when you leave. All right, so buonasera. I'm rolling up to the piazza at 11 p.m. or even 2 in the morning. Hey, buonasera. Time to hit the hay. It's buonanotte. All three of these are considered formal-ish. They're not so incredibly formal that it would sound stuffy if you greeted your friends with a nice buongiorno. But we also have ciao, and that is informal. You wouldn't necessarily use ciao in a formal situation. Ciao is used for hi or bye. In fact, it's very cute when Italians get off the phone. They say, "Okay, ciao, 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 ciao." It's adorable. But you can say hi, ciao, and bye, ciao. We also have salve. It's not as common. It's more common in Rome, comes straight from the Latin. Salve is a bit more formal, and it literally means hail. And you say salve to say hello. After that, we learned domanda and risposta. Domanda, like a demand, is a question, and risposta, a response, is an answer. So we're going to do a lot of domande and risposte, questions and answers, throughout the course because it's a great way to jumpstart conversation. And the three questions that we learned today are come ti chiami? What's your name? Or literally, how do you call yourself? Just like the Spanish, como te llama? Di dove sei? Where are you from? Which is literally of where are you? So in Italian, you're not from somewhere, you're of somewhere. And then we did come stai? How are you? How are you doing? Now the answer is mi chiamo Austin. I'm called, or I call myself Austin. Sono di una città. So I am of, and then you would give a city. The response to di dove sei is going to be a city. So sono di Washington, D.C., sono di Pensacola, sono di Roma. You would give your hometown. Later, we can learn how to say, I'm American, I come from Florida, I come from the United States, or whatever. But sono di is generally going to use a city. And then we have come stai. How are you doing? And this one, you have a lot of options, which we went over in the vocabulary, and you've got in your vocabulary sheet. Sto bene. I'm all right. I'm doing okay. Or I'm fine. sto molto bene, I'm doing really well, etc. My advice is to just pick one and make that your go-to. And in fact, you don't even have to say sto. Just like in English, if I say, how are you? You can say, I'm doing fine, or you can just say, fine, and you? So you can say sto bene or bene. And the only one that we learned that cannot take sto is insomma. You'll recall that insomma means like, oh, all together. And so grammatically, it wouldn't take sto. You couldn't say, I'm doing, it means don't ask, like, oh, forget about it. And it's a very ironic kind of response. So those are our questions and answers in the informal. And then we learned domande formali, formal questions. Come si chiama? Di dov'è? Come sta lei? Now, you'll notice this lei, the L is capitalized. Lei is she. It's the third person singular feminine pronoun. Literally, how is she? But you would use this to address someone formally, regardless of their gender. So they don't use the y'all form like in French or Spanish. They just wanted to be different and special. So they use the third person and they use the feminine singular pronoun. How they came up with that system, I don't know. But these are those questions. The good news is answers to these questions are going to be the same. They don't have a level of formality. So the answer to come ti chiami or come si chiama, either one would be mi chiamo. All right. And incidentally, the lei here, you can drop that. You can just say come sta, come sta or come sta lei. Either one is absolutely fine. And here we have side by side, come ti chiami, come si chiama, di dove sei, di dov'è, come stai, come sta, or come sta lei. Informal, formal. You'll notice that the informal forms all end in E. Come ti chiami, di dove sei, come stai. This letter, notice I'm giving it its Italian name, E, that's the marker for the tu form of the verb, right? So when you see that, it's probably tu, right? And that'll make more sense later. Unfortunately, the third person's kind of all over the place, so there's no hard and fast rule. And the advantage is that for all that it's kind of odd to use this third person grammatical structure to address someone, you get a bonus in that you can talk about people because now you know or you will know that third person structure. For now, I would recommend two things. First, just focus on your answers. If all of this is kind of fuzzy and you go, oh, dang, I can never remember di dove sei, try just memorizing your answers. Write them down. Mi chiamo Austin. Sono di Washington, D.C. Sto bene. And just memorize that so you can talk about yourself. And then the questions will come more easily. Kind of counterintuitive, but it works really well. I'd also recommend just focusing on the informal. I give you the formal because it's important to know and be aware of it, but it's not necessarily a form you have to master. In terms of when you use the formal, again, it depends on the region, but generally speaking, the Italians are not as formal as, say, the French, where you would default to probably using the formal with anyone you don't know well, and then they would invite you to use the informal. In Italian, you can use the formal in maybe professional settings. If you're speaking to a doctor, a lawyer in their office, if you are in some kind of bureaucratic situation, you're trying to get paperwork done, you would probably want to use the formal. For most situations, you're going to use the informal, and that's just fine. And you can also use the informal forms to speak to people who are younger than you. So in our class, we keep things pretty informal, but I give that to you so that you can start to notice the difference. So after that, I want to return to something we did at the beginning of our class, which is I did the language teacher thing where I whisk in the very first day and I start speaking to you in Italian and you go, oh my goodness. I'm going to do that again now. so that, first of all, you can hear it again, but also I have an ulterior motive that you're going to see at the end of the video. So here we go for a little Italian. Questa è Italia. Italia è una penisola nella forma di uno stivale. In Italia si parla italiano. Italiano è la lingua dell'arte e anche della musica. Italiano è anche la lingua della storia. Per esempio, la storia romana. E anche della pizza. La pizza è molto importante. E anche il vino. All right, so we did that at the beginning of class. Later on, we talked about asking questions. Now, I'm giving you all of this vocabulary at the beginning of the course, but we're going to focus on different questions, different interrogatives, and formal and questions that require a phrase throughout the course. So don't get overwhelmed. We have come, which is how, as in come ti chiami? How do you call yourself? Come stai? How are you doing? Chi, which is who. Dove, which is where, and we have that. Di dove sei, of where are you. Perché means why, and it means because. So think of your mom. Why? Because. Quando, when. Quanto, as in quantity, is how much and how many. And what I want to highlight here is che, cosa, and che cosa are all interchangeable ways of saying what. Che, what? Cosa, what? Che cosa, what? And to add to the confusion, quale, which, is often used in Italian where we in English would use what. So for example, you say, which is your favorite movie? Instead of what is your favorite movie? So those are your basic interrogatives. Again, we are going to spread these out throughout the course. We also have a few questions that take a full phrase. So we can contract che cosa, what, with e is che cos'è, what is that? What's that? What is it? We also have c'è and ci sono. There is and there are. But if you ask it with a rising tone, c'è un bagno? Is there a bathroom? Ci sono taxi? Are there taxis? Are there cabs? You can ask, those as questions. And then you can also ask cosa c'è? What is there? Cosa c'è a Milano? What is there? C'è, there is. La galleria, la scala, there's this, there's that. Again, we'll break these down more throughout the course. You can also contract dove with is. Dove, where is. Dove il bagno? One of the most important tourist questions. Where is the bathroom? But you'll note that we saw this as well. Di dove, of where is, and it's di dove lei, of where is she? But I mean, where are you? Or of where are you? Again, if the grammar is a little much, don't worry about it. Just learn the questions as we go on, and eventually exactly what's going on with those will become more clear. For now, I recommend focusing on come and dove because those are the first words that we learned. Once you're really comfortable with these, you can start adding more on. And we had come as in come ti chiami or come si chiama, come stai or come sta, and then we had dove as in di dove sei, di dove, and dove, right? Remember, of where is or where is. So di dove lei, of where is she from? Meaning, where are you from? Versus dove la biblioteca, where is the library, right? Come and dove. Next, we did some pronunciation, and I want to dive into this a little bit more because we really didn't go over these in depth. So we'll start with le vocali, the vowels. And the vowels are really what give Italian its beautiful ringing power and its beauty. So you always want to start with the vowels. That's why Italians are the kings of opera. So we'll start with A, E, I, O, U. A, E, I, O, U. Now, A, I, and U, which I've highlighted in orange here, they always stay the same. This letter A is an A is an A. Every single time you ever see it, ever, 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 whether it's got an accent, with no accent. If it's at the beginning of the word, the middle, it does not matter. An A is an A is an A. Same thing with E, same thing with U. You want a nice tall A, a nice bright smiling E, and a nice U, like you make a tunnel with your mouth, U. A, E, U. You really want to smile to get that nice bright Italian E. So that's the good news. Those are never going to change, no matter what they look like or where you see them. But we also have this pesky E and O, and they each have two slightly varying pronunciations that we'll go into. So we have E, E. Over on the left, E, and over on the right, E. E, 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 E. The accented one, with the accent going down, if you see the accent going up, it's not the same, but you don't see that much. Accent going down is what we call an open E. Your mouth is literally going to be a little more open for that E sound. Your jaw is going to drop a little lower. This one on the left, this E, is a little close. Your mouth is a little more closed, so we call it a closed E. Every time you see this accented with the down accent, E, it's an E. Sadly, tragically, they don't always mark them though. So sometimes you'll see an A and it's an E and it's just because of where it falls in the word or something. Don't sweat it. The difference is very subtle. It's not really going to cause you any problems in terms of making yourself understood or understanding anyone else. And I'll show you the only place where it makes even a modicum of difference in meaning on the next slide. But first, a brief note about your closed O and your open A. This is even less of an issue. First of all, you very rarely see the open A. It's a kind of a rare sound. And also, you're never going to see a difference in meaning. In fact, I could just have not even told you about that, and you would start distinguishing between O and A without even realizing that you're doing it. But the closed O is an O as an oh my goodness, and the open A as an Ollie. Ollie, right? We've seen the open A in like la storia. We were talking about history. La storia is an open A, right? Or my name, Austin. Storia. Ollie. It's a little different in English. Does this matter unless you're an opera singer? Not really. But for those of you who are interested, those are the finer points of vowels. But really all you got to deal with is A, E, I, O, U. Here's our open and our closed A, and it's not an A, it's A. You could say A forever and it would never turn into any other letter. E, that's not an A like we tend to do in English. The only time that matters is when these letters are completely on their own. Just by itself, A is and. Like the Spanish E, which is represented by our letter Y, A is and. All by itself with this accent here is is. A and E is. And we've already seen this. Remember, dov que cos You've seen this already. This is the only time that there's ever going to be a distinct meaning difference that matters at all. And even then, in context, it's pretty much impossible for it to be a problem. So if you're worried about not pronouncing your vowels just right, don't be. There's your O and A. See, indistinguishable. No difference. I mean, that matters for us. All right. After we went into those vowels, I showed you one of the more tricky aspects of Italian pronunciation, la pronuncia of ci, che, chi, che, and beyond. And this is something that's not difficult to explain, but it takes a really long time to make a habit. So let's review the rule that you all figured out. We have dolce, orchestra, che, che, dolce, orchestra. Next, ciao, chiami, chi, chi, ciao, chiami. So there's a difference there. But then we have caro, coda, cucina. Deer, tail, and kitchen or cuisine. Caro, coda, cucina. Before a, o, and u, this is always going to be that k sound. It's where we have these two letters, e and e, that we run into some niceties. So here's the rule. Before o, a, or u, it's a hard k sound. Caro, coda, cucina. But before an E or an A, and notice I'm giving these their Italian names. We'll go more over the alphabet in a second. E and A, it's a soft sound. These are considered weak vowels. So that's we have dolce, ciao. In order to make them a hard sound, we add an aka or H. So I can remember, you can remember it by saying the H makes it a hard sound. I like to think of them as like, look, they're propping up that letter chi to make it nice and strong. Ki, ke. Now, that's a pretty simple rule, especially since it also applies to the letter G exactly the same way. So not a really difficult rule, except you have been learning since you were in kindergarten to write an H when you want to make a soft sound like as in cheese or change, right? It's a habit of a lifetime to make it the opposite. So this is one of those cases where you'll know that's what it does, and then you'll look at it and you'll pronounce it wrong, and you go and it's fine. It just takes time. And remember, at the end of this video, we'll tell you more about how to iron those out with good study technique. Now I'm going to go over the alphabet because it's really important. One of my biggest pieces of advice for you is to learn the names of the letters and to use those names when you're spelling in Italian. You will thank me for this later. So let's try it out. A as in aula, classroom. B as in banco, which is a desk. C as in cane, which is a dog. D as in dizionario, dictionary. E as in esame, an exam, which you all don't have, but my other students do. F as in festa, which means a party. G as in gatto, or cat. H as in hamburger. You notice this is a foreign loan word, but also H or H at the beginning of a word is silent, whether it's a loan word or not. So H at the beginning of a letter or beginning of a word is silent. It's the only silent letter in Italian. Hooray. I as in inverno, winter, not inferno as in Dante, but inverno. L as in libro or book. M as in macchina or car. N as in notte, which we learned earlier, night. O as in orologio, that's a clock or a watch, like a wristwatch. P as in penna or pen. Q as in quaderno, notebook. R as in ristorante, restaurant. S as in studente or studentessa, it's male and female student. T as in televisione. Italians usually call the television la TV, the TV. U as in università, as in FSU. V as in voto, which is a grade, which again, you all don't have, but my other poor students do. Z as in zaino, which is a backpack. Notice that it's like pizza. It has that sound, not like a bumblebee, but as in pizza, zaino. All right. So let's do that together. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, Z. And I highly recommend that you listen to the alphabet song on that YouTube link that I sent you in the last email. We'll go over some of the niceties about things like how and when to roll your R's and things like that later. For now, learn the alphabet, and we'll refine these letters and sounds in context as we go on. But you'll notice that there are some letters that are missing, and that's because this is the Italian alphabet. It's the letters that we have from Latin and that they use in the language. To spell languages or to spell words that don't fall into Italian, sometimes we need to borrow le lettere straniere, straniere, foreign letters. So in order to spell my name, we have to borrow a little bit from Greek. We have I lunga. J is I lunga, literally a long I, which I think is adorable. Kappa is K. W is doppia V, literally double V. Doppia is double, doppia V. X and Y. So now you have the entire alphabet inventory. Now let's transition into talking a little bit about study skills, how we learn languages. And I just want to start by saying how thrilled I am that you all are interested in this. I love, 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 love sharing what I was so fortunate enough to learn as part of my master's. Second language acquisition is the newest field in linguistics. And so a lot of the way we were traditionally taught in high school with our high school French or Spanish actually doesn't line up with the kind of research that's been coming out about how we learn languages for the last just 20 years or so. So it's a really exciting field, but one that not a lot of people get the benefit from. And the result of that is that everyone says, well, I'm just not that good at languages. And my professional mission in life is to eradicate that phrase because you are good at languages. And I'm going to prove it to you. Starting off in a language, and you had this experience the other day, and you probably had it in high school, as you start off and you're like, okay, mi chiamo Austin, sono di Washington, D.C. And if you remember this episode of I Love Lucy, which I think most do, it starts off, oh, this is easy, and then pretty soon, mi chiamo Austin, sono di Washington DC originalmente nel passato, però adesso abito a Tallahassee qui, dove sono maestra di italiano a FSU, Università della Florida. Allora, mi piace parlare italiano, and you just, oh my goodness, right? And it's just whoosh, and you're overwhelmed, and you can't grasp it, and you think, I'm just not that good at languages. Well, and that's not true. Everybody goes through this, and the reason for this is our working memory. Our working memory is a lot like RAM in your computer, or it's kind of like the news ticker that goes by when you're watching TV and you see the news going by as you're watching other things. And very much like either of those things, it has a pretty limited capacity. Our working memory is always taking in the information from our eyes, our ears, from all of our senses. It's everything that we're taking in all the time, which means that if we don't do something with that information, it's in one ear, out the other. Our working memory can only really handle about 5 to 7 pieces of information at any given time. And unless we, wrap those pieces of chocolate coming down the chute, they're gone. I'll give you an example. So when you drove to Ollie, you noticed, I hope, every red car that was in front of you. you to either slow down or pass or whatever. You pass a red car. You saw that and it registered again, hopefully. But if I asked you when you got there, hey, how many red cars did you see on your way to Ollie? You wouldn't be able to tell me because that information just went on down the line and it wasn't important after that moment. So you didn't do anything with it. And we do this all the time. Language is similarly this kind of information that's always coming at us in a flood. But if it's a language that we're proficient in, our brains have become so quick and so automatic at taking every little word off that conveyor belt as it goes in, that it frees up working memory to pay attention to other things. So that's our challenge. How do we get from Lucy's first day in the chocolate factory to maybe a more experienced person on an assembly line can just churn things out automatically? And well, it's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. But how do we practice effectively is the question. I'm going to show you what it's like to be able to practice listening comprehension when you are accompanied by some text. So we're going to do the same thing that we did earlier, and I want you to listen and read at the same time and think about how your comprehension is. So here we go. Questa è Italia. Italia è una penisola nella forma di uno stivale. In Italia si parla italiano. Italiano è la lingua dell'arte e della musica e della storia, per esempio la storia romana, e anche della pizza. La pizza è molto importante. E italiano è anche la lingua del vino. All right, chances are you were able to understand way more. And that's because you were getting that input. You were doing that comprehension, not just with your ears, but with your eyes. And each one, along with the pictures, my tone of voice, and other things I do to communicate with you and make my point understood, all of that work together to boost your comprehension. We'll go more into the science of that, what you can really do to get the most out of comprehension. For now, what I want you to know is that it is that comprehension that's going to boost your overall proficiency in a language. We tend to favor being able to speak a language. We even say we can speak a language, meaning that we're proficient in it. But really what's going to drive that ability is that comprehension. And when you do it in what I like to call stereo, reading and listening at the same time with a lot of support, it's that comprehension processing that helps you get from Lucy's first day to someone who's really, really booking in the language. So that is a taste of what you can expect and what the process is. And we'll go more in the practical aspect of it as we go along. Because in order to get the benefit of that, you do need a certain foundation of vocabulary and grammar, because otherwise it's just gibberish anyway. It doesn't matter how carefully you listen or how well you implement a listening comprehension or a reading comprehension exercise. If you don't know what those words are, it doesn't matter. So stay tuned for more of that, but know that that's the direction we're heading in. Meanwhile, some advice I have for you is focus on that input. That input is either written or spoken language that you're working for comprehension. Get the gist. Try to identify the main point of what's going on. If you can kind of get the gist of what's going on, you're doing great. All that chocolate coming down the line, pick out the biggest pieces to focus on. Try to identify or try to understand the nouns and verbs. And later on, once you're really, really automatic at doing that, you can start getting those smaller pieces, adjectives, adverbs, all those little details of grammar. Nouns and verbs to begin with, because those drive meaning. Try not to rely on translation. That's, I mean, so far as a long-term language goal. I mean, if that's something you have to do because you're in Venice, you need to get to your hotel, yeah, absolutely. And of course, we have to rely on translation to a degree when we're beginners because we don't have a lot of options otherwise. We're getting to a point where we can start really immersing ourselves in language that's going to be useful. But keep in your mind that eventually you're going to try to get away from using translation as much as possible and just engage with the language directly. When you're speaking or writing, just try to make yourself understood. Just like when you're trying to listen or read and understand, try to get the gist. When you're working on speaking to one another, try to get your point across more than focusing on making sure that every little sound or detail is perfect. Um, you can always at in the evening you can write out your vocabulary or you can study it like that. But when you're engaging with the language in class and reading, writing, listening, speaking, all of that, communicating with others, focus on meaning and you can work on form later on. Be patient. It took you 5 years of total immersion to become proficient in your first language, and you didn't have a job you had to go to, and hopefully everybody you met in life was really sweet to you and helped you out. And were you done learning that language? No. We're still learning new words today, and we learn our whole lives to express ourselves better, to be stronger writers, to speak more clearly. And of course, we're never perfect at it. We have brain farts. We trip over our words. We maybe mispronounce or misuse words we're not as familiar with. So, why would you have a higher standard for yourself in Italian than you would in your native language? And finally, this is a lovely quote that I wish I could remember the name of the book, but it was about motivation that I read. A 10-minute walk you take is better than a 2-hour workout you don't do. So people ask me things like, oh, is Duolingo really good? And the answer is if you really enjoy Duolingo and you're going to do it every day, yeah, do Duolingo. Is Duolingo the absolute cutting edge, comprehensive, most scientifically fabulous way to learn another language? Well, no, no one thing really is. So on its own, is it going to get you exactly where you want to be if you really want to be proficient in Italian? Well, not on its own, but the important thing is that it's consistent. So even if you're not doing something that's completely optimized all the time, or you're not putting in the amount of effort or time that you really want to, ideally, the important thing is to be consistent. And finally, I want to ask you if you remember the Italian word for lawyer. Think about it. See, avvocato. This is a little cartoon. Ooh, here we go. It's a little animation. Go on, little anime. There we go. Oh, I object. All right. There's my little avocado. I had a student many years ago who drew me this wonderful little cartoon, and to this day, I always start out my first day lecture with avocado, and then don't mention it again for a couple weeks, and then on the first quiz, it's the bonus question, and I get so many avocados, sometimes with creative spelling, and I get a lot of cute little cartoons. But that's what I call the avocado or the avocado method. So try this method of association with your vocabulary. It really, really works, as you can see. And keep in mind that it's normal to feel like Lucy at first, and we'll go more into how you can overcome that first hurdle. But that's all I've got for you today. Hopefully this is helpful. Stay tuned for the vocabulary video for our lesson 2, and I will see you all on Thursday.